Alright guys, here's a training video for how to make donuts. There's a lot of technique involved. If you do the technique right, you're going to get an amazing donut with some awesome texture on it. If you don't do it so well, it's going to get really flat and dense. So it's really important to follow the technique. First, I have my recipe right here that I'm going to follow. I'm going to make the nutmeg sugar. So I have my 6 pan here. I'm going to measure out my sugar that I need. My nutmeg. Just going to put a lid on it. You got to make sure that the 6 pan is dry and so is the lid. Just shake it up. Right, we're going to use this for when the donuts don't fry when I dip them in the sugar. So we'll put that aside. Next is we're going to start putting together ingredients for the donuts. So I've actually set this up an hour or 2 ahead of time, but the important thing is here that the butter comes at room temperature and the eggs have a chance to warm up a little bit. If not, when you're whipping these things, paddle, you're not going to be able to get them smooth. You're going to free lumps. You need warm butter to do that. That's not melted butter, it's just room temperature butter. Alright, so now my ingredients are out. I'm going to make sift the dry ingredients. So working down in order, I already pre-measured my flour right here. I'm going to put in my double mesh strainer over a bowl. What we're doing here is I just want to shake it back and forth, right, at the same time hitting it with my hand. It's going to come out just like that. The purpose of sifting it is 2 reasons. One is to remove any lumps that might be in the flour or spice, but also 2 is to add air to it. So if I sift a cup of flour, it's going to be a couple of tablespoons of this. When I sift it again, you might actually add more volume to it. I don't know the exact number, but you're trapping air in the flour and creating wafts. So it's going to be a nice, delicate, light donut, as opposed to if I didn't sift it, it's going to be a little more dense. Right? So only sifting about half of that through, right, to make room for my other ingredients, right? So I'm going to add my baking powder. When I'm measuring these things, you want to make sure that you fill up the measurement tool and then shake it so it's level. So it can come out way different if it's heaping or if it's way under the spoon. So you make sure you got a level scoop, right? That's my baking powder. And baking soda, again, 2 totally different items, so make sure you got the right one when you're measuring these out. So salt. Cinnamon powder. Nutmeg in here as well. Okay, now the reason that I left a little bit of flour in here and added my spices is one, so I can handle it, it's not overflowing. But two is, as I sift this, it's actually going to help mix up the spices and baking powder into the flour as I'm sifting it. So. You get to the bottom, there's actually salt, which is too close to go through it, and some lumps. So I'm just going to run my hands over it to break those lumps, force it through the sift, and then I'm just going to dump in that salt. It's too big to do that. Alright, now from here, you can see it's mixed up, but it's not all the way incorporated. So I just want to run my whisk through it to make sure that I evenly distribute all that nutmeg, cinnamon, baking soda, and salt. And the way that you can tell if you did a good job is you can just look at the flour. If you see clumps of darkness in there, that's some of the spices, and you can tell you kind of mixed up. So we're going to keep going until it's all evenly distributed. Okay, that's perfect. Now I'm going to put that aside. Now I'm going to start creaming my butter with my sugar and eggs and buttermilk. So this is step 2. That was the dry phase. This is the wet phase. All right, so now I'm going on to the creaming of the butter. So I have my KitchenAid here with the paddle attachment. I have my butter that's been softening at room temperature, right? It's not melted, but it's not rock hard either. So I'm going to add that to the bowl. Add our sugar. And now I'm just going to put this down and cream it until it's nice and soft. So I'm going to do that on medium speed. I don't want the stuff flying out, but I want enough speed in there to get that really cranking and make the butter smooth. All right, so while the butter is creaming, I want to crack my eggs, which is what I'm going to add after this is done creaming. You want to do it into a 6-pan, not into the KitchenAid itself, because if you accidentally drop an egg into the KitchenAid or get a shell in there, it's going to be lost and you're going to ruin the batter. So again, I'm going to crack my egg on a flat surface like that. It's going to help the shell from breaking into the egg itself. Right into the 6-pan. All right, 3 of eggs. Again, you want to try to not crack it on the side. It's going to make that shell break and jet right up into the egg itself. So now that I've cracked all my eggs into the 6-pan, I'm going to measure out my buttermilk and cider vinegar. I'm going to add that to the eggs. And last, I'm going to measure out the vanilla extracts. Now it's important that I took my eggs out with my butter so I had a chance to warm up. But I want to slowly pour this into the butter and sugar because it is still slightly cold. And if I poured it all at once, the butter will firm up and you'll have chunks of butter there. So I want to gradually mix it in so it gives it a chance to fully incorporate without the butter seizing up. So 1 whole egg just dropped in there. Just going to give it a break until it's all the way incorporated. Add a little bit more. All right, so just going to pause it and scrape down the sides of my bowl again to make sure all the ingredients are incorporated. just mix it again for another 10-15 seconds to make sure it's all together. All right, so now my butter, I have my wet ingredients here that are all properly creamed, and I have my dry ingredients that are sifted here. So I made a little bit of well in my bowl. I'm gonna pour my wet ingredients in, like that. I'm gonna make sure to use a rubber scraper and get all that good stuff out of there. So from here, I'm just gonna fold the flour on top of the wet ingredients. Now the key here is to mix it until it just comes together. You don't want to overwork the dough. You'll be developing that gluten. So it's almost like wet sand at this point. I'm just making sure there's no big clumps in there. And at this point, I can put it onto my sheet pan and kind of press it down and it'll come together. All right. So I have a third pan of extra flour for dusting. But what I did is I already liberally coated the sheet pan with flour. You have to do that because the batter is very wet. Spread it out. Push it down a bit. Flatten out. From here, just want to very lightly sprinkle some flour on top of it so the rolling pin doesn't stick to the wet dough.
Will you say how thick it should be?
Yeah. From here, just rolling it out. Just pushing down lightly, not too hard, because you want the dough to be even all the way across. So if I'm really pushing down hard, you're going to see these divots and kind of rolling hills in the dough. Which you don't want. So you want to just very gently and evenly press out the dough. Now, I'm bringing it probably about a ½ inch to an inch from the very end, right? And just kind of rolling those ends out. But that's the gauge. The thickness should be pretty thin, about, quarter inch, ½ inch. But really, how we're measuring this, 1 times recipe should fit an entire sheet pan. So again, you don't have to roll it all the way to the corners, but it should be about 1 inch to a ½ inch away from the corners, and we're just going to roll it out until it's smooth. So once I've done that, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for 20 minutes, just to let that butter and everything firm up, and then we're going to cut it. We'll be right back. Okay, so our donut dough has been cooling in the walking for about 20 minutes. Again, that's just to firm up the dough so it's not soft anymore. So I have another sheet pan here, dusted with flour, and you can either use your donut cutter, which can be a little bit finicky, or you can use a set of biscuit cutters, and then we'll spec the size of these in the recipe. I've already actually started to cut some of these, but you're cutting out rounds, and then when you're cutting the next donut, you want to make sure that you're just almost touching the previous line. So we're cutting out as many as we can. Once these scraps are made, you can't fold those back in and make more donuts. So we want to try to get as many cutouts as possible. So when I come down and cut this out, right, transferring it over to my floured surface, and then taking out the center, you have your donut. Right? So I'm going to do this for the rest of the sheet pan, whether cutting it with my donut cutter, or again, cutting these out with a biscuit cutter, and then cutting a hole out the center. I'm going to transfer these all over here. You can keep the scraps pieces. It's good for staff and taste and get a little sample for the customers. Same with the donut holes and stuff. All right, we'll be back over at the fry. Now we're ready to fry the donuts. We're gonna put them in gently in the oil with no basket. They're gonna float, so you wanna make sure that you don't put too many that they're only in a single layer. You want to be doing this all during donut service because it's the better you can get the donut from being fried and glazed with sugar to somebody eating it, the better. So we're going to set my timer now, and then we're going to come back and flip them over. All right, now my timer went off. I'm just going to come over here and flip the donuts over. So the other side fries evenly. So I'm going to set my timer again. Wait for that to go off. All right, now the timer went off. I'm going to get my donuts and I'm going to scoop them up nice and gentle. I'm going to put them in a fry basket. Just let some of the oils drain out of them. So now that they're done draining, I'm going to take them out of the fry basket, plop them right in the nutmeg sugar. Not a sheet.